Let's talk to Ross Clark, columnist at The Sun. This morning, he's got a piece on page 10 about net zero. Energy bills aren't high because we rely on gas, but because of government policy, Ed. And he's answering Ed Miliband, who wrote a piece in The Observer, of course, at the weekend, in which he told a bunch of barefaced lies, actually, about how the reason that we're paying so much for our energy prices at the moment is because of fossil fuels. Well, all I can tell you is with all the turmoil in the markets, the price of gas is down, the price of oil is down. So Ross, I'm afraid, has got this completely right. Ross, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm constantly staggered by how Ed Miliband gets away with sort of spouting these ridiculous untruths, because, and lies, quite frankly, about what is going on in the energy markets. Because he makes out that the reason we pay so much for our electricity, which I believe is the highest price in the world, is because of fossil fuels, when it's clearly not.
Yes, yeah, Britain has the highest domestic and industrial electricity prices of any member country of the International Energy Agency, and that's been true for a while. And yet this is in spite of us following the policies which, according to Ed Miliband, ought to be reducing our electricity prices. We've got one of the highest proportions of energy generated by wind and solar in the world. And we're not the most reliant on gas. The US is, we generate about 34% of our electricity from gas. The US generates about 42% of its electricity from gas. And yet energy prices in Britain for industrial users like the steel industry, 25 pence per kilowatt hour on average. In the US, it's the equivalent of 6.5 pence per kilowatt hour. So clearly there's something not quite right in Ed Miliband's analysis. The reason why electricity prices are so expensive in Britain is the way we're using gas. We're not using it as a sort of steady load as we used to be. We're switching gas in and out of the national grid at short notice for very short periods in order to fill the gaps created by intermittent wind and solar.
Yes.
And of course, the problem of doing that is it pushes up the unit cost of producing electricity by gas. I mean, if you use a gas power station for 3 hours a week, per unit, it's going to cost far more than it costs to keep the power plant on all the time, because of course you still have to pay maintenance. The owners of the gas plants still have to pay the pay the finance on what it costs to build the plant and so on. So that's one of the reasons why gas seems to be a very expensive form of energy in this country.
Yes, because also most of the gas I think that we use is imported, isn't it? Which would also add to the cost.
This is the other problem. We are becoming increasingly reliant on what's called liquefied natural gas, LNG, which arrives by ship, mostly from the United States.
Yeah, quite a lot from Qatar, I think, as well.
Yes, and Qatar as well, and some from Brazil. And I mean, it's necessarily quite an expensive way of consuming gas, because you have to first liquefy it, and then when it arrives at its destination, you have to regasify it. And that process consumes about 10% of the energy in the gas itself. So, yes, of course, it's expensive. We could, on the other hand, of course, by now be relying much more on, we could have a shale gas industry in Britain, but of course this and the previous government squashed all hope of that.
Exactly right. And I mean, there is a conversation to be had about that, but unfortunately Ed Miliband and his band of maniacs is very keen, and I think it's already happened, to sort of cement over the shale gas wells that were drilled in this country up in the northwest of England, so that not only will we not have the choice to kind of to dig for it or to drill for it, but we won't be able to, because it's all been destroyed.
Yeah, it's a sort of scorched earth policy, trashing the sort of possible, fracking infrastructure. And you say, why has this industry been banned? As a result of banning fracking on Britain, we're just becoming more reliant on imports. We're consuming shale gas, frack gas from the US instead. And of course, there's a net increase in global carbon emissions as a result of that, because, as I said, the process of transporting LNG consumes about 10% of the energy in the gas itself. So it makes absolutely no sense from a point of view of global carbon emissions.
And also, none of it makes any sense when you think to Ed Miliband praising GB Energy, for example, which he did in the piece, talking about how it's going to create all sorts of jobs and it's going to be great for the environment. And GB Energy is a complete shibboleth, it seems to be, and a complete construct of nonsense. It's like a hot air balloon without any hot air in it. There's nobody working there. They don't produce any energy. They don't buy any energy. They don't sell any energy. They don't have a website. They don't have an office. It's a complete load of old cobblers, I'm sorry to say.
Yes, and not for the first time. I mean, some Labour-controlled councils try to set up energy companies which are going to save us money and cut emissions, and of course they went bust.
Yeah.
But I mean, nobody should ever forget the promise that Ed Miliband made during the election campaign. He was going to save us £300 a year on our energy bills, and we get to the end of this Parliament. If you're not paying £300 a year less than you were at the beginning of this Parliament, don't forget it. It's Ed Miliband who made that promise, and it's not going very well at the moment, is it? Our electricity prices have just gone up again. If Labour fail on that promise, they will not deserve to be re-elected.
No, I think that's absolutely right. Ross Clark, thank you very much indeed. Ross, in The Sun this morning, 32% wind and solar energy generated in the UK, 15.6% wind and solar energy generated in the USA, 25.85 pence average price per kilowatt hour in the UK, 6.48 pence average price per kilowatt hour in the USA, a quarter of what we're paying, less than a quarter of what we're paying here.